Hey everyone, my name is Nathan Payne. Welcome back to another episode of Blu Ocean Crypto. So today I want to talk about Guild of Guardians. I've actually been playing this quite a bit over the last week. Our research team recently re-updated our report, so I want to go through our confidence rating on that, what score we assigned to it, talk about kind of what happened over the past few years with the game, and also I'm going to give you some input from myself, who, like I said, have been playing for a little while. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Okay, so looking at Guild of Guardians, right off the bat, it's got a confidence rating of 3.9 out of 5. We'll break that down at the end. We had Phoenix Fire in Blu Ocean Games Guild. He's the one who created this report. And Miles is the one who does the confidence ratings. So it is on an ETH layer 2, immutable. That's great. Makes it pretty easy, to be honest. I like the onboarding part of it. You know, you just use your immutable passport with your Google account. Then when you download the app, you just connect through your Google account. Straightforward. Great. So it's a fantasy action RPG mobile. Although it's interesting because it was first touted as a action dungeon crawler, and then they completely changed the direction of the game. And actually, that's where a lot of people weren't too happy about that change for whatever reason, because they bought into an older idea. Idea changed. Here we are. I actually really like the new game and kind of how the direction they did take it, but there's a lot of controversy around that. So they talk about here, I am going to link this report down in the bottom so you guys can kind of read through this. I'm just going to summarize. Basically, you've got your group of guardians. There's over 200 different types. There's 4 different rarities, and it's basically an auto battler dungeon crawler, right? So you're going to level up your guardians. You're going to bring up their star power by enlightening them. That's going to allow you to progress further and further in more dungeons. There's no actual strategy when it comes to playing the battles. Really, the strategy is more around formulating the team, crafting items, building your team's power up in that way. So, although they do have 6 different classes, which makes things interesting. You've got the warrior, tank, assassin, ranger, major, support, and then there's also combat attributes such as health, attack, defense, and secondary attributes, which I thought was pretty cool, like critical strike, critical damage, healing, and evasion. So really it's about finding the best combinations to beat the different maps. That's where the strategy comes in, which is really interesting. There's daily challenges, different tasks. What I like about it is I can pick it up and play it for 10 minutes, or I can play it for an hour. So it allows me to kind of choose my level of engagement. Beyond that is kind of difficult because you do have energy. You know, so you're going to want to come back the next day, kind of redo your daily quests. You can play for free. That's what I did as well. I think I spent $1 on one microtransaction just to see, and I haven't touched another penny since, and I'm actually enjoying it quite a bit on the free-to-play route. Now, when you're going through the battles, and we've got a bunch of gameplay footage that you'll be seeing here throughout this video as well, to kind of give you a better sense, but there's different camps that you can stop at for healing, for upgrading your runes. Basically, as you progress each map, you can get a rune. These are going to give permanent buffs during that run. And there's even curses that you get when you tackle bosses that are going to kind of counter some of those runes. I found a little trick in the game, though. Basically, you're going to look to take the curse that gives enemies a shield, and then you're going to take a rune that lets you do 100% extra normal damage against shields. And that seems to be the most broken thing to do, because now you can actually use the curses to your advantage. None of the other ones are really to your advantage, so pro tip there. Now, what is interesting as well is, that, like I said, there's the 3 rarities of the characters, but really where the earnings is, this is what took me a little bit to understand, but it's very important for people to know, it's in the endless dungeon. That's where you're competing for a leaderboard. That leaderboard rankings is what's going to dictate your ability to earn the GOG token. So right away, this is where a lot of people kind of go, wait, I need to buy the NFTs. I need to buy the Guardians, because how am I going to compete on the leaderboard for the rewards? And yes, that is true. So what's really interesting to me is, can a free-to-play player actually get to a point where they're earning something? And people say yes. They're talking about how free-to-play player can mint an NFT. You can get to a point where you could actually do that. But I want to actually test it out, because it doesn't make sense to me. Oh, if I just dump a ton of money, get the best Guardians, I can be the highest rank. that's how I'm going to earn. And if it's leaderboard based, that means there's a limited amount of rewards. You would naturally assume that the free-to-play player is going to get squeezed out. So the crafting system is really cool. They talk about how there's 4 pieces of equipment that you can wear, but there actually is a 5th slot for exclusive bonded items specific to each Guardian, and then a 6th for an artifact, which is powerful gear that can be customized to provide a specific, unique passive effect. I really enjoy that. The Enlightening is just like Summoner Wars or Idle Hero, a lot of these other games, right, where you got to take versions of the same guy to use to up the star level and so on and so forth, you know, and that's really what takes the longest as far as progression is concerned. So that's the Enlightenment. There are these cracked hearts that you can use, which are a replacement for the need of having another version of the same guy you're trying to upgrade, so you can use these cracked hearts instead. That is handy as well. And just talking about the tokenomics a little bit, because this got really interesting to me. I actually don't mind this breakdown. I think it's all right. The Guardians Corporation is the first thing that I think when most people see this, they go, huh? And even I don't fully understand it, but I'm sure you can dig into it and figure out what that 6% really goes for. 20% for the team, that's kind of normal. 35% player awards, and then 28% community development. Taking a look at the emission schedule was kind of interesting, though, because you can see the token came out a long time ago, right? November 2021. Really, the player rewards didn't start until this year. So when they launched the game, essentially. So it's been interesting to know that the health of this token, you know, it's been around the block for a while. I believe I looked the other day and I think it was around 100 million market cap. Of course, it's probably fluctuated a little bit from that, but that's not bad considering. Now, they do talk about how you can mint NFTs as a free-to-play player. I haven't been able to get to this point or understand it, but it says that it is possible. You know, you can, through progression and gameplay, get to a point where you can actually mint one of these Guardians, and then you kind of work your way up. So that does sound cool. The prices are kind of interesting right now. I'd say they're reasonable, but they can get really expensive. And actually, let's just jump over here and kind of show you, because when you look at the lower level ones, you're like, oh, $1, a couple bucks. Okay, this is great. You know, and taking a look at some of the even just intro legendary ones, $15, $16. Where it gets expensive is on the Enlightenments, because they start at 5. But if I want to go to like Enlightenment 10, and let's see, sometimes the marketplace doesn't always load properly for me here. So let's try 10 and we'll say, here we go. Just takes a second. The price starts jumping quite a bit, right? $400, $400, and you're like, oh, okay, it's because I had to use a whole bunch of these guys and a whole bunch of these guys. And this is really where the pay to win, and it is pay to win aspect comes in, because if you're going to get these guys with 10 enlightenments and you're going to build up a massive team, I mean, I could see how it could be very easy to spend tens of thousands of dollars in this game. So that's something to definitely be mindful of. I still think one of the most interesting things, and this just always blows my mind, so I think it's worth mentioning the video, that there's a $500,000 NFT. I remember looking back into Guild of Guardians years ago, and even noticing the Legends Guild token. I don't know if it was the Warrior, I think it was the Legends, was still around 30,000 back then. Now, when they minted this Mythic Guild token, there was only 10 of them, and I think it was only $100,000. But to see an NFT at $500,000 right now when they don't even have the guild aspect in the game just blows my mind. Well, maybe just the people who own it don't want to get rid of it. So they're just kind of threw it up as a joke. So that's always really interesting, because it's always been that high. Actually, yeah, here we go. So it shows the original minting was $100,000 of the Mythic Guild. Now, the way that works for the guilds is you get a percentage of the crafts, things that are crafted from your members, depending on the type of thing that you have here, essentially. So like the Adventure Guild, I remember it shows, yep, 1% of guild crafting sales, all the way up to 10% of guild crafting sales. And it also impacts the amount of members you can have. I think it's 20 for the Adventurers, all the way up to 50 for the Mythic. Now, there are some special NFTs. This is pretty cool, it's worth mentioning. They have partnered with 8 predominant esports teams: Cloud9, Fnatic, Navi, Ninjas in Pajamas, NFG, SK Gaming, T1, and Team Liquid, all names that I recognize and know. But I'm curious, because I'm just going to say it, how is this esports oriented? I don't see that. I know there's a PvP aspect to it, but it's really just who has the best wins I don't see skill involved in this auto battler aspect. Now, yes, you can time your skills and there's other things like that, but I think there'd have to be a lot more done to the game to get to a point that I would actually consider this even esports worthy. But it is a narrative that they've pushed, and they've partnered with some pretty awesome companies. So, I mean, obviously there's something I'm missing, or they did this partnership before they changed the game. I'm not sure. Or they're just going to focus on PvP. I used to play Summoner Wars a lot, and I did not see a PvP. Well, I didn't see an esports aspect to that. I did see a PvP. There is the breeding part where they're talking about how you can mint your guardians, through play. There's no NFT lending. It is free to play, which is great, right? So there's no real barrier of entry there. They do talk about how everything's going to be guild oriented, but it's not at that point yet. Here's some of the partnerships that I mentioned as well. Now, their development team is interesting. A lot of these people do have quite a bit of experience, which is why I think the confidence rating is what it's at. These guys have a proven track record. They're hitting their targets as far as the roadmap goes right now. This is a recently updated one. But let's dive into the actual confidence rating now that you guys have that full scope of the game. So, like I said, it was 3.9 out of 5. Fun factor is 70%. And I think a main reason for this is because of the auto battler aspect. There isn't really a lot of skill involved. I mentioned that already. You're just kind of watching things play out. But for people who do enjoy the strategy aspect and leveling and progression, that can still be quite fun. Tokenomics model gets us 80%. So it's using the IMEX's ZK EVM. They're clearly after App Store approval, which is great. You can get it on Apple App Store and Google. So they're one of the first games to do that. Now it's a single token, the GOG, with governance functionality. It is redistributed to the rewards pool upon being sent, facilitating longevity. The developers gave themselves 20%. That makes sense, kind of common. So it's interesting. One comment here that Miles mentioned here is that as long as there's no plutocracy over the DAO's governance and it sufficiently decentralizes over time, this should work well. And I do agree with him there. 80% on the team. Just like I mentioned, these guys had some great experience working for companies such as Konami and have expertise outside of basic game development too. Community is 80%. Now, this is interesting because the community adds their voice on socials. Some of them are sponsored about the project and their excitement for the future. Others speculate on earnings and show gameplay footage. Now, although not intrinsically a world-breaking concept, they do prove that the project has strong fundamentals and is at least somewhat fun. I do agree with what Miles said. Plans for growth is 80%. Because there's no real additional gameplay loops planned yet, which is interesting. And there's no news past the last event that happened in Q3, even though we're really already past here. So they just got to update their roadmap, just like most companies. Now, there's some additional comments down here, which I thought was interesting from Phoenix. Now that Guild of Guardians is out, it's easier to see what the developers are trying to create. The game is easy to start and available on both the app stores. Yep, there's a lot of content within the game to get used to and menus to discover. That's kind of the fun part to me. Not spending essential resources early is difficult as you start to collect Guardians and quickly realize that it's not just about having the highest rarity Guardians, but having the right team combination. Yes, I agree with that too. Getting used to what runes to choose between each stage, what equipment to select, and ensuring that every synergy is found to your party gives the best chance of victory. That's really what the game is. You're just finding these combinations, figure out what works best, leveling up your guys, trying to use your scarce resources the best you can to push further in the game. It reminds me a lot of Summoner Wars. Now, he does talk about how he's concerned about inflation on the NFTs because of the minting and kind of how that's all going to play out. So, hope you guys enjoyed this video. That's our full scoop on Guild of Guardians. Like I said, we've got a 3.9 out of 5 for a confidence rating, 70% fun factor, 80% tokenomics, 80% team, 80% community, and 80% plans for growth. Thanks so much for being subscribed to the channel. It really makes a big difference here. Smash that like button if you can, and we'll see y'all in the next video. Cheers.